March 28th. This is Jaguars Happy Hour. Jaguars Happy Hour is brought to you by the St. Johns River Water Management District. And now, a guy who missed you over the past 2 weeks a lot more than you missed him, J.P. Shadrick.
And we are back. It's Jaguars Happy Hour on this Thursday, March 28th. Busy hour ahead. NFL annual meeting review. It was earlier this week down in Orlando. The head coach spoke at the breakfast media availability early in the week. We have 2 weeks until the offseason program begins. And that will be with strength and conditioning. We'll get to that 1 month away from the NFL draft. We will keep it real, as we always do, and Microsoft questions from social media. Jaguars Happy Hour brought to you by the St. Johns River Water Management District. Florida's water, it's worth saving. We're on 1010XL AM, Jaguars.com, Jaguars YouTube. JP Shadrick with Jeff Lageman. At long last, the band is back together.
Holy cow, where you been?
Elsewhere. How are you?
I'm good, man. It's good to see your face again. Good to be here talking about free agency and also looking forward to the draft in a big way.
Been a lot going on, right? The Jags been busy in free agency. And
I think the last time that we talked, and I don't even think we were on the air then, everybody was very down about this team just because they had just completed what I call the subtraction era, which always happens at the beginning of the offseason before you start free agency, and they hadn't yet started any additions. And so a lot of people were down on this football team going, what are we doing? We're losing Calvin Ridley. How can we let him go? Wait a minute. Free agency hadn't even started yet. Have some patience. This team's going to add some good players, and they did. I think they've added some very good players.
We'll get to some of those coming up in just a little bit. Also, a former Jaguars executive gets a nod from the Pro Football Hall of Fame. Rule changes from the owners' meetings this week. Some key ones that I'm sure you'll have some thoughts about as a defender in your past. And, of course, those social media questions coming up. Let's hear, though, from the head coach, Doug Pederson, at the AFC Coaches Breakfast earlier this week at the Ritz-Carlton Grand Lakes in Orlando. And with all these players brought in, a lot of players with postseason experience, something important to the head coach to establish a culture.
This is the culture that I want to establish in Jacksonville, and this is the reason why you go get guys like Mitch Morse and Eric Armsteads and the Darnell Savages and guys that have been to the postseason. These guys have been captains on their teams, and they've been to Super Bowls, they've been to AFC Championship games. So these guys know how to win, and that's kind of the influx of talent that we want to bring onto our young roster. Guys that have been there, done that.
Yeah, been there, done that. They know how to win. They know how to get to the playoffs, and once they're in the playoffs, then that takes care of itself. And they didn't get to the playoffs last year, so having that experience down the stretch is something that they were looking for, apparently.
Well, I like what they've done because you're talking about veteran players, and I think the only player that might be borderline getting up in years is Eric Armstead, but he's still a quality player.
Morse is up there as well.
Morse is up there too a little bit, but he's a different category because, an offensive lineman has a longer lifespan or longer shelf life than a defensive lineman has. So I'm not concerned about that. Eric Armstead, I think, is going to have some kind of surgery to correct some issue that was bothering him from last year. He's missed some games. But when you watch the length and the strength that he plays the game at and the anticipation, I really like him for this football team. And, in a perfect world, you like to have Eric Armstead as a rookie, and you're going to have a decade with a player like that. And so that's why a lot of people ask me, what would this team draft? What do you think they're going to draft? And, I think some of the obvious answers are wide receiver and corner. But I don't think anything's off the table. I think even a defensive tackle could be a possibility at number one for this football team just because, look, have you ever had too many good big men? No.
It's hard to find too many.
Let's go ask the Philadelphia Eagles if they would not draft a defensive tackle in the first round.
But, Logs, they've spent so much equity on the defensive line, draft equity, free agency dollars over the last, 5 years, right?
That shows you how valued those positions are.
At some point, the investments you've made need to go get better themselves, and you got some other position groups on this team too, right?
Well, I think part of the problem is that you have invested in that position in years past with draft picks, but some of them haven't helped you pay the bills, so to speak. Look, you missed with Kayvon Chazon. Smooch just kind of was an okay player, and then he had a significant injury, which impacted his ability to help this football team. So you haven't been able to hit any home runs at that position, and it's one of the reasons why you've had to go to free agency to supplement the talent at that position. One of the guys that you were excited about, Big Devon Hamilton, last year was a guy, you give him an extension and you think that he's going to be a centerpiece, one of those guys that you draft and you give a second contract to. Well, then he got hurt last year, and that impacted his ability to help this football team. So part of that, JP, is that this team has had some self-inflicted wounds that they haven't done a good enough job drafting, and they've had to expend some free agent resources at that position. But, you got to keep swinging because that's an important position.
But at some point, the free agency train has to stop, right? You got to start getting your own guy in, develop him, and then bring those guys back.
Yeah, like Josh Allen, right? I mean, give him a contract extension.
Sure.
Maybe a year or two ago would have been nice. Then I think it would have been less expensive.
But, I mean, they have still until July 15th
yeah,
to do that now.
I'm not saying that
my point is on the interior.
Sailed.
The interior guys are all free agent, except Hamilton. He was a draft pick here.
That's right.
Roy Robertson-Harris, Fadikasi's gone now. So it's something they've just brought in another free agent, Armstead. I mean, he's a 10th-year free agent.
Fadikasi, I mean, you're talking double digits in salary, I think, for a couple years, and you really didn't get the production out of him, and some of that was due to injury or what have you. But those are the things that you'd like to have players that are what I call at the fixed income level, because that's what your draft picks are. Yeah. Those are more affordable than somebody that you go out in free agency and acquire. But I think that this football team could draft anybody just because they went and got Eric Armstead, or they went and got, for example, Darnell Savage, a safety, doesn't prohibit them from drafting a safety, or doesn't prohibit them from drafting a defensive tackle once we get to April 25th, I believe that day is.
The general consensus in a lot of these mock drafts is cornerback. Let's hear Doug Pederson on the status of the cornerback room as it stands right now.
I feel good. I do feel good. Ronald Darby, who we had in Philly, and added that piece, obviously, and with Tyson back there, and now with Darnell adding that mix. We got, as we mentioned, Antonio, and we got some young players that have played, and Monteric and stuff like that. I mean,
all right, so that's the status of the room now, and of course Tyson Campbell kind of leads the way on one side of this thing, and okay, there's going to be some newer or younger faces in there, and a lot of these mocks have at 17 the Jaguars going at corner. You talk about you can't have too many big men. You can't have too many cornerbacks in this game either, the way it's going.
Well, you got to think about it too. When you think about corner, I think about it from the standpoint of, okay, you're going to play nickel and you're going to play dime. And safeties are now playing linebacker, and then you're playing more corners that are playing safety, right?
That's right.
It's not very often that you have a player with a unique ability like an Antonio Johnson, who's a safety that has the ability to play corner. Most of the time you're having a corner that has the ability to move to safety because it's a little bit easier making that transition than vice versa, because the skill set required to play corner, I think, is a little bit higher than playing safety. I'm probably not in the same category as Doug in that I feel good about that room yet. I think there's still got to be some people that are brought in. Darius Williams is gone, and I get it. There was a pretty high cap number, and not only do you have to manage the talent, but you got to manage the cap from a number standpoint. His number was pretty high. He was a very good football player. Last year, I think he was a top 10 corner in the league performance-wise.
Passes, defense, he was great when the ball was in the air and such. But the way they're going to play is different as well, right?
Maybe, but good corners are good corners. But the challenge is, okay, now you've got to find somebody that can take that spot. Okay, did Darby, is he going to be that guy? Can he help that position? Look, I don't know, but I think that this football team is definitely going to be leaning towards the draft to help that position out, and wisely so. You know, this team has taken some shots at that position, and they've done it later in the draft in years past. They, in the 5th and the 6th round and the 7th round, they've taken multiple in years. We're at the 7th round.
Yes.
And so I think now you've got to look at it, maybe doing it a little bit higher where the percentages of hitting are a little bit better. But yeah, that's a tough position to find a guy that literally comes in year one and just hits the ground and running. The guy in Houston, for example, the corner that was drafted, I think it was 3rd overall, ahead of Sauce Gardner a couple years ago, and I'm named
Stingley.
Derek
Stingley from LSU.
Stingley. Okay, he did not have a very good rookie year. I mean, he was downright poor his first year. In fact, I mean, the Texans were widely criticized because he was not playing well, and of course the Jets hit a home run with Sauce Gardner. And this past year, Stingley had a little bit better of a year. I don't know. He's still not in the same category of Sauce Gardner. But it's not easy to get those guys in the first year that come out and they're really good. I mean, if you do find it, you've really found something, because it's hard to find that.
It's Jaguars Happy Hour, 10 Gen XL AM, Jaguars.com, Jaguars YouTube, JP Shadrick with Jeff Lageman. Coming up, we'll discuss some rule changes out of the NFL annual meeting last week. Which free agent player that has been signed are you most excited to see play?
Me?
No, the other co-host in the room. Yeah. Yes, you.
Well, I want to get your thought on this too, but
Yeah.
I mean, I'm kind of biased. I mean, I'm always excited to watch the big guys, the defensive linemen, and Eric Armstead is such a unique guy in that he has the size, the length, the experience.
A lot of folks kind of compared him to the Calais signing some years back.
Well, you hope so. I mean,
that was a great result, obviously.
Calais, I think, is the greatest free agent signing in Jaguars history.
I'd agree with that.
Anybody else? I mean, names that you could throw out there is to be in that Calais Campbell category. And I mean, we'd have to think about it, but I mean, it's a great question.
Jimmy Smith was a different kind of free agent signing, right?
Right. I'm talking about an unrestricted free agent to where you're competing with other teams to get a guy.
It's tough. It'll be tough to beat Calais. But the style of play.
But I mean, his style is a little bit different.
Okay.
But some of the measurables, the length, the strength are very similar. Eric is more of an inside player. Calais was more of an inside player, 3-4 defensive end kind of guy. Although I think that he was probably not exactly in the most optimum position for his talent level that he had and the skill set that he had. And I think here you saw it a little bit more. But yeah, you hope he's in that category of the Calais signing, because Calais, again, was the greatest free agent signing in Jaguars history. But I'm looking forward to watching Eric Armstead, and I'm curious to see what kind of role he's going to have in this defense, because we don't exactly know what this Jaguars defense is going to look like until it's rolled out in front of our eyes.
Yeah, and haven't had a chance to see any of that yet. I think for me, it's with all this focus on offense and the quarterback and changes at the wide receiver position, Gabe Davis, what does he really have to offer?
Him.
I mean, 4 years in the league, hasn't had monster numbers except for some big key moments, especially in the playoff games at times. Can he step in and provide some things down the middle of the field that they really haven't had a lot of over the last year or so? I think he could.
Me and Kai had the discussion last week a little bit about Gabe Davis, and just a quick little self-plug here. We're going to be doing a Microsoft Surface evaluation with Eric Armstead, also of Gabe Davis. And watching Gabe Davis, I remember the first thing that I looked at was his numbers, okay? And, you see the targets, you see the catches, and then the thing that really jumped out at me at first was the yards per catch, which over the last 2 years, he's caught 50-something balls or 60 balls or whatever it was. But he's averaged like 17 yards a catch, and he's been about 7 or 8 touchdowns every year, which is great numbers. And I made the statement last week that if I had the choice of having Calvin Ridley or Gabe Davis, I'm taking Gabe Davis with the roster that you have here, because you have Christian Kirk and Calvin Ridley kind of having two similar skill sets. Gabe Davis gives you a skill set that's just different. Okay, he's big. He's a tall guy.
That's right.
And at first thought, when you say, okay, 17 yards a catch, you might think the guy's fast. So I've Of course, one of the first things I Google, doing the deep dive, okay?
Oh,
using that term.
See what you
using
did.
the Urban Meyer term there.
Uh-huh.
Okay. To find out what his speed was, and coming out, I think he was like a 4.55 guy. I mean, how does a 4.55 guy average 17 yards a catch? I mean, because your first thought is he must be fast. Well, he does it in other ways. He's smart. Yeah. He's savvy. He's got the size. He does a great job of selling routes to create space down the field, and credit to him.
You know what'll help him, too, is that you talked about his size and his toughness and all that stuff. That'll help probably in the run game, too. If you're running outside, you got that guy blocking out in front of you, that's a good addition.
Well, the Jaguars already have, I think, some of the best blocking wide receivers, and then also I put Evan Ingram into that category because he's not one of those big tight ends. He's a space tight end. They are some of the best blocking consistently, game in, game out, play in, play out of guys that I've watched on film, and they take great pride in it. And so Gabe is in that category as well, and he's going to fit right into that room because of that.
Welcome to the club, Gabe. Join us Tuesday, April 16th from 6:30 to 8:30 p.m. at Everbank Stadium for the Be Inspired by Jags Jobs event. It's presented by the Florida Lottery. Register now at jaguars.com/brightfutures. We're on 1010XL, jaguars.com, Jaguars YouTube. In a moment, rule changes coming out of the NFL annual meeting. Lageman's thoughts on the banning of the hip drop tackle after this on Jaguars Happy Hour.
What's the best part about lawn care during the winter? You can give it a rest. Lawns only need watering up to once a week. Really, that's it. Using less water means you're saving time and money that you can put towards something else. Before you run your sprinklers, remember, give it a rest and only water up to once a week. For more information, visit waterlessflorida.com.
As the official supermarket of the Jacksonville Jaguars, Publix is helping fans gear up for game day with the limited-time Jaguars sub. Piled high with hot deli chicken tenders, boar's head bacon, cheddar cheese, coleslaw, and barbecue mayonnaise on a white sub roll. The Jaguars sub is an easy, delicious meal for any fan. Make it an ultimate game day by ordering the Jaguars sub online for in-store pickup. Publix, where shopping is a pleasure.
Looking for the best clearance deal of the year on trucks that deliver power, performance, and savings? Then it's time to say yes during Ford Truck Month. Yes to limited time savings on all remaining 2023 Ford F-150s. And yes to the #1 selling trucks 47 years straight, Ford F-Series. Find all your yeses at the clearance sale during Ford Truck Month, only at your local Ford dealer. Based on 1977 through 2023 CY industry reported sales.
I'm John Davis, Secretary of the Florida Lottery, and I'm proud to lead an agency that is creating brighter futures for Florida students, families, and communities. As the primary funding source of the Bright Future Scholarship Program, the lottery has helped nearly 1 million students reach their dream of a post-secondary education. And we will continue to do our part to ensure that every student across this state is aware of these opportunities and has the resources needed to succeed. Because together, we can build a brighter future for all.
The Jaguars bring performance, strength, and passion to every play. And you'll find the same when you bank with Everbank. Open an Everbank Performance Savings account and score serious savings. See what you could earn at everbank.com/Jaguars. Everbank, advantage you. Member FDIC and the official bank of the Jacksonville Jaguars. Since 2014, there's been only one official home builder of the Jaguars, Dreamfinders Homes. With quality-built homes and a speedy move-in process, we're in 20-plus communities in the best locations across Northeast Florida. Dreamfinders Homes is everywhere you want to live. So get off the sidelines, Jags fans, and get into the game. Let Dreamfinders help you navigate your home purchase and offer great interest rates. Visit dreamfindershomes.com for all your move-in ready homes and step up your game.
Jaguars Happy Hour brought to you by the St. Johns River Water Management District. Florida's water, it's worth saving. JP Shadrick, Jeff Lageman, glad you're with us. Music lives here. Just announced shows at Daly's Place include Stone Temple Pilots, Live, Lindsey Sterling, Two Door Cinema Club, Slightly Stupid, Dirty Heads, and more. Get your tickets at dailysplace.com or call 633-2000 and learn about VIP seating.
Yeah, the Baselli seating.
That might qualify as very important.
By the way, what kind of music does Dirty Heads play?
I don't know the answer
Or
to that.
Stupid?
I can tell you about Stone Temple Pilots and Live.
Slightly Stupid, I guess, right?
Yeah, that's right.
STOOPID.
Correct. Slightly.
Yeah.
So, but now remember, Live was, I remember Live from like the Woodstock '94 album.
I gotta do a little. I gotta look them up.
They're from, I think they're from like York, Pennsylvania, if
All
I
right.
remember right.
All right.
Off the top of my head.
I like the Stone Temple Pilots.
Yeah.
Really good.
So that'll be fun. That's coming up. dailysplace.com. Check out all the information. Congratulations goes out to Dan Edwards, former Jaguars PR executive, also with the Steelers in his past, the Dolphins in his past, receiving an award of excellence from the Pro Football Hall of Fame. It was announced yesterday. He was a league office intern the same year as a young guy named Roger Goodell. Imagine that. A year with the Dolphins, the year they went to the Super Bowl, and then on to the Steelers. Came to the Jags in '94 to lead the PR department, and he did so through the 2020 season. He is enjoying retirement, by the way. And
Hey, look,
congrats to Dan.
One of the finest men that I've ever had the privilege of knowing. And I can't say that any more strongly because I knew Dan when I came in here as a player, and he was the head PR guy. And then obviously after my playing career ended, then it became he was my boss for many years because Dan was public relations, but then also broadcasting department.
Yeah.
And he's responsible for me and you, JP, being in the seats that we're in.
Got me here.
And a lot of other people that are in the Jaguars broadcasting department. And he's a great guy, class, total class. And he has been one of the icons in the National Football League for many years. There's not many people that know the league history like Dan Edwards, and there's not many people that know the league that don't know Dan Edwards, because everybody knows Dan Edwards.
No doubt.
That have been around the National Football League for any period of time.
And credit to the Pro Football Hall of Fame for adding this a couple of years ago, honoring individuals that might not be able to be voted in and get a bust in Canton.
Yeah, because look,
there's 15 different people in all different walks of the league. There's an equipment manager, there are medical folks, there's all kind of, it runs again, assistant coaches. Monty Kiffin is one this year as well.
I think that really, this is I think one of the greatest things that the Pro Football Hall of Fame could do. But here's the crazy thing. The Pro Football Hall of Fame is not owned by the National Football League.
Yeah, that's right.
It's a completely separate entity. So it's not like the National Football League is saying, hey, we want to throw some praise towards Dan Edwards or Monty Kiffin or whoever. I mean, this is the Pro Football Hall of Fame themselves recognizing people that have had a huge impact in the game that we all love so dearly. I mean, that's a great thing. And I'm glad that they're doing this because it takes so many people besides the elite players and the elite coaches to make this league function at the level that it's at, and it takes a lot of people.
So congratulations to Dan Edwards. We're on 1010XL, Jaguars.com, Jaguars YouTube, yes.
The price of his autograph just went up.
You got that right. Yeah, absolutely.
I texted him earlier today, and I was
start
like,
charging, Dan?
I said, what's the price for an autograph now? Clearly going up a little bit.
Can you imagine the Baselli-Dan Edwards combo football autograph? Now that's a collector's item.
That'd be great. No, I was actually talking with my wife earlier today, and that had a conversation with Tom Coughlin when had the J Fun Wine Gala here at the stadium, and was talking to him about, we need to get a breakfast club together to where, myself and Dan, Baselli, guys that played for the Jaguars in the early days and even to now, and people that worked for the Jaguars. Because, look, there's a lot of people that have played and or worked for and coached for the Jaguars that have retired here or that have stayed here after their time with the Jaguars ended. And a lot of coaches A lot of former coaches have stayed in Jacksonville.
Absolutely. That would be a heck of a breakfast club, you said?
Yeah, kind of have a breakfast club to get together, some of the
He's got to get up early.
the
That means
crew.
you can't stay out too late anymore.
JP, when you get older, you don't sleep as much anyway. You'll figure that out.
Hey, let's get to a couple of these rule changes that have come out of the league meetings this week. And let's start. Hey, you're a former defender, so I am so curious to hear your thoughts on this hip drop tackle. Only the swivel version of it being banned. You can drag a player from behind when you're falling, and that's still legal. The only tackle that is illegal now is where the player is lifting himself in the air and then falling on the legs.
Sideways.
That is now
he
banned.
swivels it, kind of turns his body to land on the lower body of the ball carrier.
There's been all this outrage on social media. Oh, they're banning tackling now, and let's put flags on everybody and all that. What do you think?
I'm okay with it. I'm okay with it because it's trying to protect the players that carry the ball, which those are the players that sell the game, that make the game popular. And if it makes it a little bit harder on the defenders to find a different way to get them down or to corral them, then so be it. The league will adjust. The players will adjust. The first time I ever saw the hip drop tackle, and it didn't even have that name at that time, was going back into the, I guess it was early mid-'90s when I was with the Jets and we were getting ready to play the Philadelphia Eagles, who had Randall Cunningham. And we put a bounty, and I believe this was 94, we put a bounty on Randall Cunningham to take him out of the game.
Oh, my gosh.
And I want to say the pot was somewhere around, I don't know, about $3 or $4 grand, maybe.
It's against
somewhere
the
in that
rules,
range.
right? I mean, the people have been like, they've taken
that
draft picks and
stuff
fired
was,
people.
That stuff was widespread throughout the league at this period of time. Obviously, now that stuff's not good, but
right.
And so Marvin Washington, and he didn't intentionally do this to hurt Randall Cunningham. And when I say take him out of the game, we weren't trying to take him out of the game by breaking a leg or anything of that nature. Just a good, solid, legal hit. Hey, he's got to leave the game because he's hurt a little bit. But Marvin tackled Randall and then fell on his legs in that hip drop tackle style, and it broke Randall Cunningham's leg. And so Marvin got a pretty good pot, I believe, that week. But I mean, that's the first time that I ever saw that style of tackle that had an injury impact on the player that was tackled. Now, I've never tackled anybody like that I know of, because I didn't try to do that, and nobody that I know would do that to try to intentionally hurt somebody. Sometimes you're just trying to do anything you can to bring somebody down.
Think about a defensive back, and here's Derrick Henry coming at you. I mean, you're going to go high on him, how are you going to do it?
Derrick Henry is very difficult to hip drop tackle on, because to do the hip drop tackle, you got to come high and then kind of fall down on the legs, and nobody's going high on Derrick Henry.
You know what? We were talking about this
because
yesterday.
he does that thing.
The stiff arm.
That stiff arm.
Yeah. We're talking about this with Bucky Brooks yesterday. It might cause at some point a rash in more knee injuries moving ahead, because some of those smaller guys might have to go low now. If you're running out of targets high on guys, you can't hip drop and all this stuff.
That's been happening anyway, because the where you're getting defenders that are trying to stay away from the head and neck area of receivers and ball carriers because of possible penalties, or potentially even getting tossed out of the game if it's a repeat offender. So I'm not of the belief, like Bucky, that this is going to end up causing more knee injuries. I think the rules that are already in place have already led to some knee injuries. But again, I think that the league and the players will adjust like they have before with different rule changes, just like when you remember you talking about the offensive line rules about not cutting in a certain area, and Baselli was losing his mind that this was going to be implemented. How can you do that? Why can't And again, the offensive lineman adjusted, and we forget about it, that it was even an issue.
One play I think that you might remember the playoff game against the Chiefs a couple of seasons ago when Patrick Mahomes, Arden Key, fell on the back of his leg in the pocket.
That was a hip drop?
That would have been a hip drop, because he was off the ground and he fell on that right leg and twisted up that
and gave him the high ankle injury. And I've read some of the comments from the league, and I believe it was Troy Vincent talked about it, and he said plain and simple, and he threw some numbers out there about the percentage increase in injury of a hip drop tackle compared to a regular tackle, and it was a little bit difficult to understand and decipher the percentages that he threw out there, and I don't know if he got it completely right, but I understood his intent, that there's a much higher injury rate with that style of tackle versus anything else. And again, the league will adjust and it will go forward, and I don't think it's that big of a deal at all. The major rule change is going to be the kickoff return thing.
Let's get to that. There is a new kickoff rule, of course. This is an XFL style. The kicker is at the 35. That's where the ball's on the tee. The other 10 players from the kicking team will line up at the opposing team's 40-yard line. The receiving team will have at least 9 players in a 5-yard setup zone. That's between the 35 and 30. The returners are in a landing zone in the red zone between the 20 and the goal line. Nobody can move until the ball is received by a returner, and it's a touchback at the 20 if it touches the ground, or a player in the landing zone and goes past the goal line, it's downed. Touchback at the 30 if the ball is kicked into the end zone. So they're encouraging more returns.
I like the visual slide that you have prepared here. That's from the league.
That's from the league, Jaguars.com. Nice. David Cho in the background getting that done today. So it passed 29-3. And this opens up, obviously, the return. There were no returns at all in the Super Bowl. 13 kickoffs, 0 returns. They want it back in the game. They want it as safe as possible. What do you like about this?
Well, I like it because it now makes another potentially exciting play. I think it will create more points. It also will put a bit of a premium on special teams play, which has kind of fallen by the wayside a little bit. So it will make those players more important. Daniel Thomas.
Yes.
Daniel Thomas now becomes more important to this Jaguars roster because of a play that's now going to be changed, that's going to be a legitimate chance for the opponent to score on. So you better have some guys that have a little bit of size, okay, and also a lot of speed to be able to play in some space. A lot of people think that now it's going to create more of a demand for linebackers. I'm not a believer in that. The most popular special teams players over the last decade in the NFL has evolved to the safety-type players. Players that weigh in that 210-ish range, 215-pound range that have got speed and the ability to run in space. If you're a Daniel Thomas guy, now you become more important. I think you're going to have the payroll change a little bit because you're going to have to make sure that you have guys that can prepare for that very play. And Daniel Thomas, I think, has been the Jaguars' best special teamer, along with, obviously, Wingard, who has been a tremendous player. And Daniel Thomas has got, I think, a very special ability because he's an outstanding gunner who's got the speed on the outside on punt team, which makes him very unique.
You know where this can get interesting on the returns is when these coordinators start scheming up returns, and you can start pulling guys and get lead blockers out in front in theory if you have it planned that way, or maybe throw in a lateral across the field. That's always a possibility because you only have you're not going to have layers of guys on one side of the field coming after you in the corner. You're going to, if you get to the corner fast, there's 3 or 4 guys there, and you have an opportunity to take it the distance.
Yeah, the one person that I'm going to call on this to get some commentary input on is from Daryl Johnson, who was longtime Dallas Cowboy fullback, won Super Bowls with Troy Aikman and Emmitt Smith, and Daryl's a good friend of mine. Daryl and I came in the league together, and he was the previous head of, I believe, the XFL, and was a big part of the league.
Well, he was in the USFL, and I think he's still involved in the new merger.
He is involved. He's the kind of the head guy of USFL, so he's been around that play a little bit longer. So I'm going to talk to him at some point in the next week and get his input and thoughts, and because it's going to be interesting. This is kind of new ground. Puts a little bit of a premium on a returner, the ability to have players that can play special teams, but also where's the creativity now going to go? Because now you have a new play.
Yeah.
A new play that you can tinker with, okay? If you're the mad scientist coach in the office this time of year, you're now creating things. You're You're reading the rule book to the full extent about what you can and can't do.
Mm-hmm.
I'm sure they're going to be able to maybe find some holes that maybe those holes will have to get tweaked in the future. But it's something I'm looking forward to. I'm glad that this play was instituted along the lines of the hip drop tackle, and that you've now cut down on some potentially violent collisions that have been happening for years on kickoff coverage. The speed of the collisions of that play over the years, I've seen some plays that'll just make you kind of hold your breath and hope that the player that ended up receiving the hit was going to be okay.
The Jaguars are celebrating their 30th season, and the time to get your 2024 season ticket membership logs, it's right now. Right now. Be at the bank for every touchdown.
I got mine.
And secure your seats at jaguars.com/tickets or call 904-633-2000. Jaguars media executive Dave DeCantis messaged in. He said slightly stupid and dirty heads are reggae/ska bands.
All right. What band?
Similar to like Sublime. Ska. Reggae and ska.
What's ska?
That's another conversation for another time. We'll get to that. Jaguars Happy Hour is brought to you by the St. Johns River Water Management District. Florida's water, it's worth saving.
What's the best part about lawn care during the winter? You can give it a rest. Lawns only need watering up to once a week. Really, that's it. Using less water means you're saving time and money that you can put towards something else. Before you run your sprinklers, remember, give it a rest and only water up to once a week. For more information, visit waterlessflorida.com. Don't get sacked by a no-name propane rookie at Jacksonville. Draft an all-star and switch to AmeriGas, the official propane provider of the Jacksonville Jaguars and the homes and businesses who know it was always the Jags. Show off your Duval pride at your next tailgate with a Jaguars grill tank from AmeriGas. To find an AmeriGas exchange location near you or to order a propane fill-up for your home or business, visit AmeriGas.com/Jacksonville-Jaguars or call 844-PRO-JAGS.
Over 40 years ago, I made a decision to help people. Might sound simple, but following your passion never is. Big ideas tend to get bigger. What started out as one lawyer's vision is now a team of over 400 with an obsession. Today, protecting you and your family is more than a job. It's a way of life. Over 40 years ago, we set out to build a law firm. It's clear now that what we've built is so much more. I'm Eddie Farah, Jacksonville.
The Jaguars bring performance, strength, and passion to every play. And you'll find the same when you bank with EverBank. Open an EverBank Performance Savings account and score serious savings. See what you could earn at everbank.com/Jaguars. EverBank, advantage you. Member FDIC and the official bank of the Jacksonville Jaguars.
I'm John Davis, Secretary of the Florida Lottery, and I'm proud to lead an agency that is creating brighter futures for Florida students, families, and communities. As the primary funding source of the Bright Future Scholarship Program, the lottery has helped nearly 1 million students reach their dream of a post-secondary education. And we will continue to do our part to ensure that every student across this state is aware of these opportunities and has the resources needed to succeed. Because together, we can build a brighter future for all.
Looking for the best clearance deal of the year on trucks that deliver power, performance, and savings? Then it's time to say yes during Ford Truck Month. Yes to limited time savings on all remaining 2023 Ford F-150s. And yes to the #1 selling trucks 47 years straight, Ford F-Series. Find all your yeses at the clearance sale during Ford Truck Month, only at your local Ford dealer. Based on 1977 through 2023 CY industry reported sales.
I feel like we've added some pieces through free agency that are going to help us. They give us depth. We got some experienced guys in like Eric Armstead, Mitch Morse, who can really add some, one, the competition you're looking for, but two, I think a veteran presence at those positions.
There's the head coach, of course, Doug Pederson, at the AFC Coaches Breakfast earlier this week at the NFL annual meeting. Jaguars Happy Hour brought to you by the St. Johns River Water Management District. Florida's water, it's worth saving. JP Shadrick, Jeff Lageman, 1010XL, Jaguars.com, Jaguars YouTube. That brings us into Keeping It Real for this week, Logs. Mitch Morse and Eric Armstead, both 10th-year players in the NFL coming up in 2024. And they're veteran players, right? That's what they are. 10
That's
years
right.
in. Mitch Morse has missed some games off and on the last few years. I think last year he played every game. Yeah, 17 games last year, 13 games in 2022, 17 the year before.
I think he was, didn't he miss the Jaguars game in
in
Tottenham?
Yeah. No, he played.
I couldn't remember if he missed that game.
No, he was in it. Earlier in his career in Kansas City, though, missed some significant time. That's a long time ago now. Eric Armstead's coming off a meniscus injury, and he still came back and played through the playoffs to do that. They're free agent guys you come to plug and play now. But for whatever reason, if they're not around or available a certain week, then what? What? It's the same group that you had without them, right? That everybody was so concerned about the offensive line going into free agency. How do you go about it if for some reason they aren't available?
Well, first and foremost, the team's not done making additions to this roster, so that part is not complete. It won't be done either after the draft. There will be a different class of players that you can sign after the draft to supplement the depth that maybe you couldn't address in the draft. So there's still time to address those needs if all of a sudden, okay, Mitch Morse misses some time. Okay, who can step in? Okay, what happens if Eric Armstead misses some time? Well, we're going to have hopefully some new younger defensive tackle on the roster from whether it be a draft choice or an undrafted free agent or a guy that was a more affordable free agent option. So I don't worry about that. I think you also look a little bit at the durability issues in the players' past. For the most part, these players have been available. Now, if you were thinking about signing, for example, the tackle that the New York Jets signed from the Dallas Cowboys.
Smith? Tyron Smith?
Tyron Smith.
Yeah.
Now, that would be kind of, the sirens would be going off and the flashing lights would be going off a little bit there because he hasn't been available very much over the last couple of years. But the two players that we're talking about, Mitch Morse and Eric Armstead, they have, for the most part, been out there. But there's always a risk associated with any player, whether it's a year 10 player or a year 4 or 5 player. For example, Roy Robertson Harris, for the most part, has been available to his football team almost every game since the day that he was signed as a free agent. Okay? You did good there. Well, you flip that around and you look at some of the other players that you've acquired, and the defensive tackle that you just lost or let go of, and he ended up signing Fatukasi, wasn't available for a whole lot of games.
He was not.
But he was a young player that had a lot of availability prior to signing him. So, sometimes it's just the luck of the draw. Sometimes age has something to do with it, but sometimes it doesn't have anything to do with age at all.
The thing, though, about this, too, is Mitch Morse's deal is, 2 years? Eric Armstead, reportedly 2 years. Eric Armstead's reportedly 3 years.
Yes.
So this, with their age, in theory, you'll have to be doing this kind of finding. You have to find these positions again in a couple years, right? Or that means they're going for it now. If they're bringing these guys into play right now, and this is not quite an all-in moment, a poker reference, but we're getting darn close, right?
Well, and what you're trying to do is to supplement the depth on your football team, and you'll continue to supplement the depth on your football team. For example, you've got Luke Fortner, at center. Now you've got Mitch Morse also playing center, You kind of think maybe, Mitch Morse is going to play in the immediate future, and then Luke Fortner goes to be a backup, maybe a swing guy, if he can earn that position. Does that keep you from drafting a center if all of a sudden you've got a player that's rated really well on your draft board in round 4? I wouldn't be scared of doing that because the reality is that you have to continue to supplement your roster, and hopefully, and maybe it's not round 4. Maybe you say, okay, we can't find the value because we don't have that kind of value on that position because we already have 2 players. But in maybe round 7, you would say, you know what, center, sure. And you might find a guy in round 7 that is a tremendous center at some point in the future that you develop. So you always are looking to try to make your roster better, and I think you put a higher value on a position if it's something that you have a position of need, but it doesn't preclude you from drafting any position that you don't have a really a need for. Maybe you just say, okay, well, like I said, later in the draft, maybe you can find something there just because the player's too good to pass up.
What if it's a linebacker?
Like a corner. Corner, obviously, I think the value is high in the early rounds because you have a need there.
What if it's a linebacker? I mean, they've drafted how many linebackers the last 2 or 3 years around here?
Well, and I'm okay with drafting a linebacker. Here's why. Number one, you've got a very expensive starter, a veteran player, okay, that you paid in free agency because you weren't really drafting well.
Correct.
And then you have 2 draft picks, okay, that are not really draft picks anymore, but they're your young players in Devin Lloyd and Chad Muma.
Yeah.
Okay, so these are players that are younger. Well, you got this new kickoff rule. You're thinking also now that linebackers are going to be a little bit – so no, you're not going to say, well, we're not going to draft a linebacker.
Okay.
You're still going to consider drafting a linebacker because your best linebacker is an expensive option, and you're always trying to get high level of performance with lesser amount of pay so you can use higher pay for the holes that you weren't able to fill.
Well, I think we just kept it real.
I mean,
you kept it real.
Unfortunately, in the National Football League, and some people don't like this, there's a lot of economic decisions that have to be made because you have to manage a roster, but you have to manage the roster within the confines of the salary cap. And so you have to be smart about it.
Up next, Microsoft social media questions. It's Jaguars Happy Hour brought to you by the St. Johns River Water Management District, Florida's water. It's worth saving.
What's the best part about lawn care during the winter? You can give it a rest. Lawns only need watering up to once a week. Really, that's it. Using less water means you're saving time and money that you can put towards something else. Before you run your sprinklers, remember, give it a rest and only water up to once a week. For more information, visit waterlessflorida.com.
Since 2014, there's been only one official home builder of the Jaguars, Dreamfinders Homes. With quality-built homes and a speedy move-in process, we're in 20-plus communities in the best locations across Northeast Florida. Dreamfinders Homes is everywhere you want to live. So get off the sidelines, Jags fans, and get into the game. Let Dreamfinders help you navigate your home purchase and offer great interest rates. Visit DreamfindersHomes.com for all your move-in ready homes and step up your game. The Jaguars bring performance, strength, and passion to every play. And you'll find the same when you bank with Everbank. Open an Everbank Performance Savings account and score serious savings. See what you could earn at everbank.com/Jaguars. Everbank, advantage you. Member FDIC and the official bank of the Jacksonville Jaguars.
Hello, I'm Dan Fields, and we have some great news. Fields has the vehicle you want, in stock, priced right, and ready for delivery.
Fields Auto Group is Jacksonville's luxury automotive destination for Cadillac, Jaguar, Land Rover, Lexus, Mercedes-Benz, and Porsche. Inventory is back and available for immediate delivery.
And every Fields customer can take advantage of our Fields Amenities program with complimentary loaners, car washes, and our cafes. You deserve the best.
Stop by today or go to fieldsauto.com.
Jags fans, do you have a high schooler interested in a career in sports? High schoolers and one parent or guardian are invited to Everbank Stadium Tuesday, April 16th from 6:30 to 8:30 p.m. for for a Be Inspired by Jags Jobs event presented by the Florida Lottery. Listen to a panel of Jaguars employees who received Bright Future scholarships, plus meet a player, win prizes, and more. Space is limited, so visit jaguars.com/brightfutures to register. Don't get sacked by a no-name propane rookie, Jacksonville. Draft an all-star and switch to AmeriGas, the official propane provider of the Jacksonville Jaguars and the homes and businesses who know it was always the Jags. Show off your Duval pride at your next tailgate with a Jaguars grill tank from AmeriGas. To find an AmeriGas Exchange location near you or to order a propane fill-up for your home or business, visit AmeriGas.com/Jacksonville-Jaguars or call 844-PRO-JAGS.
Jaguars Happy Hour brought to you by the St. Johns River Water Management District. Florida's water, it's worth saving. JP Shadrick, Jeff Lageman. It's Jaguars Happy Hour on 1010XL AM, Jaguars.com, Jaguars YouTube, winding down the final moments of this Thursday afternoon. Coming up April 15th. Yeah, it's the start of the offseason program.
Yes, it is.
Strength and conditioning, that's coming up.
Sure enough.
So players will be back around, and here we go, offseason program.
Well, the offseason has already started for most of the players. I mean, they're doing it on their own, wherever they are. There's a lot of players that go to, which has really been a dynamic that's changed through the years. Years ago, players, once they left and went their own way, they just work out at a local gym and get together sometimes on their college campus. They'd maybe return there. But now you have all of these elite performance training centers and people that have these high-level strength and conditioning coaches. I mean, and a lot of players take maybe a few days off at the conclusion of the season, then immediately become immersed in this training program that starts for them somewhere else. And then once they come back here, they've already been doing that stuff for weeks or months, and now they're just doing it with this team, with the team here at the MEC, or the MEC, as it's called.
Is it called the MEC?
The MEC, MEC, right?
I've only heard MEC. I haven't heard the MEC terminology yet. I mean, it's Miller Electric Center. I know that.
Yeah, the MEC.
You're just starting that now, I think.
I don't know.
Have you heard that somewhere?
I don't know if I've heard that before or not, but it's called the MEC. MEC.
I'd
Miller
never
Electric
heard that.
Center.
Well, I know it's the Miller Electric Center, the MEC.
I mean, it sounds good.
It's sure
the MEC.
It's catchy. I'm with you.
What's the guy? The NFL Films, John
Facenda.
Facenda.
The autumn wind is a raider.
Autumn wind at the MEC.
Let's get to some social.
I don't have that voice like you.
Nobody does.
Nobody has that voice.
John Facenda's voice. Social media questions powered by Microsoft. We put the cat signal out earlier today on X. Here's the best we've come up with. At Amelia Wizard. So Lageman has just been retained as D-line coach. What specific techniques would he teach Trayvon Walker to improve his game?
Well, I wouldn't start with techniques. One of the things I think that Trayvon really has to learn is to be able to get on the edges of offensive linemen as a pass rusher. Because I think that's really – I wouldn't work so much on – and you can obviously with the run technique, but I think he's pretty good against the run already. But as a pass rusher, a lot of times he wants to go down the middle of an offensive line.
Like right by the numbers.
He's giving the offensive lineman the handlebars, so to speak. And – when you give an offensive lineman the handlebars, you give them control. When you get on their edges, become a little bit more elusive or a little less of a target, then you can create some difficulty for an offensive lineman. So, for example, JP, if I was pass rushing you, I don't want to let you grab a hold of my shirt right at my chest and grab a hold. So I don't want to bull rush you or power rush you all the time. If I end up bull rushing you or power rushing you, I want to make you think that I'm speed rushing you up the field and then give you a little shake. Now you're not sure what I'm doing. Now you're a little bit lighter in your feet and you're not expecting power. So then I can bull rush you. But I think Trayvon a lot of times has a tendency to go to the power right away, and he needs to not go to the power. He needs to work the edges a little bit more at the beginning of his pass rush. And then also his get-off has got to be better. You know, Dwight Freeney, Hall of Famer.
Sure.
What's the one great trait that Dwight Freeney had?
Well, that first step.
The first step. Light. Howie Long, one of the greatest defensive tackles to ever play the game, one of the greatest announcers that I think has been in the studio. Love Howie. Howie had arguably the greatest first step back at that stage of the NFL. When I say that stage, he was one of the great pass-rushing defensive tackles who had an unbelievable first step, studied snap counts, studied cadences, studied the audible system of a quarterback so that he knew that, okay, if the quarterback comes to the line of scrimmage, he goes, all right, red, 32, red, 32. Red meant it was on one. Why? Because think of red, white, and blue. Red is 1, white is 2, blue is 3. Or he would understand that sometimes snap counts, okay, blue 121, blue 121, and the ball was snapped on 2. What does that tell you for the next time?
Yeah.
Second number in the sequence when the quarterback gets the line of scrimmage tells you the snap count. Howie was good at that. If Trayvon can get a little bit more of that, he will be a better pass rusher if he has a better get-off and he's working the edges of the offensive players with more frequency than he has done.
Next question at Radius_Johansson. It feels like the Jags had good free agency, addressing critical needs to give themselves flexibility in the draft. So, what do you think are the most important position groups to address in the first 3 rounds, Jeff Lageman?
Well, yeah, and I think it's a great question there from Radius.
Yeah.
Okay, Radius.
Sure.
I think it's a great question, and it's a great observation that they have filled some holes. And I think that that's the most important thing to do in free agency prior to the draft so that you can draft the best available player. But there, again, you still have a little bit more value at certain positions because you maybe not have quite as much depth. And also positions have more value based on others. So, for example, like corner has more value than safety in my book just because it's more of a premium position. So you have a little bit more value there. So, I love that. I love that. Okay, fill the holes. Now you draft best available players. And what positions do I think first 3 round? I think corner is always going to be there. Wide receiver is always going to be there. And then pass rusher is always going to be there as well. And take your pick, whether it be a defensive tackle or an edge player, because I think you got some flexibility with Trayvon to move him inside or outside. And also moving Josh inside occasionally because we saw Josh and Trayvon get sacks from the 3 techniques this past year.
One more question at Wako Garina. Jeff, in your opinion, who would play Sam linebacker, and what would be your ideal pass rush combo? #DTWD. So, yes, give us your front 4 in a pass rushing situation.
Well, wait a minute now.
The Sam stuff, too.
The Sam linebacker you're talking about a position because typically when you go to nickel, your Sam comes out.
Correct.
So it's a position that only has about 30% of the defensive snaps overall. That's not a big-time position. I think you've got Chad Muma can play Sam. Devin Lloyd can play Sam when you have 3 linebackers on the field. Your perfect 4-down combination, obviously Josh and Eric and then Trayvon. And right now, you've got to find the 4th. And right now, I don't think you have a clear-cut 4th. If I had to pick one right now, Roy Robertson-Harris, just because he came off of last year healthy. Now, before Devon Hamilton got hurt, Devon Hamilton was the most impressive interior pass rusher that this team had, who was a true defensive tackle. But after the injury last year, he's got to kind of get back to where he was at. But right now, I would probably choose Big Roy. Who do you think? What would you put out there?
That seems right to me.
4.
Yeah, those are right. Yeah. You start moving guys around though. You start moving Josh Allen in or Trayvon inside, then you got to have some outside guys somewhere.
This is where also why I said that pass rusher is a consideration in the first 3 rounds. Because, perfect example, you can't have too many good pass rushers. I don't care if it's defensive tackle or defensive end, edge, whatever you want to call it, doesn't matter.
Our thanks to Joe Fortunato, Brent Reber, David Cho, our entire crew behind the scenes, Jeff Lageman, JP Shadrick. Good to see you, Logs. We'll do it again next week.
Good to be seen.
Yeah, always. That'll do it for Jaguars Happy Hour, presented by the St. Johns River Water Management District, Florida's water. It's worth saving.